What's going on, people? We are glad to have you here. It is week 10. It's hard for me to even say that we've been so far. I hope you're checking out the previous videos. We've noticed that we need to discuss prompt engineering with you all, right? And it's week 10. We got 2 more weeks. Week 11 is going to be destined for domain 4. Week 12 is going to be destined for domain 5. And we're still here in domain 3. So let me just share something with you really quickly. I'll share my screen. And simply put, this is the exam guide. We don't need to go back up to the top. I think you've recognized this if you've seen enough videos, but we're right here in domain 3. This is task statement 3.2, just talking about prompt engineering techniques. I think this is probably the hottest topic around AI, no matter what level you're on, right? If you're one of those individuals who've just been introduced to AI, you're trying to get to prompting, right? And if you're one of those who've mastered AI at this level, then you're probably still tweaking your prompt techniques, I would say. So this is the topic for today, right? Coach, I really love like the way that you've been talking about prompting. We haven't had a single episode about prompting, but you have talked about ways in which you trigger a model to get some information. What are like a few things that you want to add there when you consider the techniques that you've been using?
Yeah, that's interesting. And it certainly has evolved over the last few
Yeah,
months.
yeah.
And so, my favorite before many of these newer models, particularly with Claude and the models that think for you now, was the chain of thought,
Nice.
because it allowed me to just simply ask the question, right? I gave it
Yeah.
context about the who I was in the
Mhm.
sense, meaning if I'm a technical delivery manager, that's my context. If I'm a social marketing research manager, that's
Yeah.
my context of who I am or who
Yeah.
I'm prompting the model to be or persona that we're going to be in. And then what is my task or what is my objective, right? Giving a little bit of context again, what am I trying to get done? But the important part about chain of thought for me has been for me to see how the model is thinking through it. All right.
Yes.
So that
Yes.
it helped me to dissect and discern very quickly, this is a level of accuracy that I can trust. Does this
Yes.
make sense? It's very similar to when someone's telling you a story. Do
Yeah.
you believe how the story is going, right? You get some cues a little bit like,
Yeah. It's
they're
accurate.
embellishing a little bit. I don't know if I really trust. Let me go and check behind the scenes about this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to me, that's actually the way that I was approaching prompting, or still do, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And the reason that I say chain of thought is that you can really just tell the model at the end of all the context that you provided in the question is think through it. Tell me how you thought through it. Show me
Mhm.
how you thought through it, or just think through it. And it'll provide that, okay, this reasoning, right? This is the way that I'm approaching it.
Mhm.
And here is my outcome based upon that. And when my math teacher would always tell me, show me the work. Show
Show
me
me the
your work.
work.
It's good that you got the answer, but show me your work because I want to
Yes.
make sure you got the concept. And so that's
Absolutely.
the way that I approach it.
No, that's excellent, coach. I remember those days. Show me your work. I was like,
Yes.
man, you know what? I can't use a calculator. I got to really write it down. I don't know if they're still doing that in school and education today, but they really had us crossing our T's and dotting our I's for
Yeah.
sure, for sure. And so that's what we're here to do. And the same things that coach just told you about are the basic principles around prompt engineering. Not a very hard thing to consider. One thing you do got to consider is what model you're going to use. And so coach talked about asking that model about itself to be able to explain what are you good at, you know what I mean, and what's your most updated information, things like
Mm.
that. And in week 1 we talked about this concept that is on the exam. I'll let you know this, it's not, there aren't a lot of questions in regards to latent space of a model. Is basically how that model thinks, how it considers the input that you're going to provide it, right? How does it categorize that to provide some type of output? And that makes me think of my subconscious, right? Me and coach were talking about meditation prior to this. We have conversations that don't regard anything in tech at all, and they're golden. But we were talking about just kind of meditation and things like that. And one element of meditation is to be able to access your subconscious mind. Now, I'll tell you this: when you go and you ask a model about the latent space of that model, it has no idea about its subconscious, but it really does act like the subconscious. So as you're dealing with text, even if you're trying to create images, that is right there in the subconscious mind of the model to provide you some type of output, and that is the model's latent space. So just one of those flashcard items for you to look to. But let's look to something more basic than that. Let's look at prompt engineering. There's this blog. I'm going to put the link out there. You'll be able to access this link in the post, right? And so what we're looking at now is what is prompt engineering? You can go to the top of this blog page and kind of review what that means or get some precursor information. But I just wanted to hone in right in the middle of this thing because you know what? There's different types of prompts we can go for, right? Maybe we can combine some of these, but at least there's a way for you to deal with, let's say, classification. And as an example for classification, I could think of movie reviews. I think if you go and you do one of those labs around ML, you probably get some sentiment analysis ML. And there's one in particular that I would suggest. It's called Setup in the ML Environment and Simulearn. And I'll drop that link as well. I won't try to flood the post with a lot of links, but you can go through an example of sentiment analysis where a model needs to tell you, hey, you know what? If somebody gives a movie review and they say it was painful to watch, the model should be able to say, that's a negative review. And it should be able to help you throughout whatever your process is from a business standpoint. Maybe you're reviewing those surveys. But there's other things here. There's other options that you can consider when you want to deal with prompt engineering, ways in which you could interject some input into a model. Looking at the next one here, it says question, right? Without context. And when you read through this section here, Coach, it reminds me of retrieval augmented generation, how we need to look at some internal knowledge. I think it's talking about that. And so maybe we don't want to deal with any reasoning that happens out there beyond your knowledge base. And this is what it's really pointing to. Summarization is really good. Coach, you've talked about the security domain within technology. You talked about dealing with data within technology here. And if I am some, let's say, financial advisor or financial analyst, right? What do you think about this one here? Like this way of prompting here? What does it give me? And what is the value when you consider somebody in a role like that one, right? Either financial security.
To me, I go back to how time, right? So time is of the essence for me, right? When I think about stock market is where my mind goes, and being able to quickly just enter a short passage. And let me say this, let me finish answering the question. So when I think about just having the response of a shorter passage that's accurate as well, and that is trusted, right? As I said before, when I was talking about, is this story, sounds like the story is a little bit far-fetched. How far is this really going to go, right? Let me verify a little bit of this information. Is where we think about how trustworthy the responses are. And sometimes this is where we come back to maybe create this RAG database or this retrieval augmented response from the LLM based upon information that we're providing to it. Because we want to make sure that there's accurate information being provided back to a customer, or let's say an analyst, or let's say a doctor, or let's say a medical tech that's querying information that they don't want to have to go dissect a bunch of books or articles or PDFs or try to remember where something is. It's able to retrieve accurate information quickly because time is of the essence, whether it's health, whether it's medical, or whether it's financial. What about disasters? Let's say that there's a disaster any place in the world and we want to be able to retrieve information quickly about how to do something or follow steps. So it's the urgency and accuracy that comes to my mind there.
Can I get to what I need to get to? I don't want to look through this entire, right, let's say framework or whatever I need to do. Maybe there's a procedure that you go through in disaster recovery. Now I can just say, hey, here is a large language model that can really give me the summary. So I love all of this. Even when we get down to, I think one of the topics that we talked about the other day was dealing with Claude 3.7 Sonnet, and how there's this new element of reasoning. And I don't know if you use some of the popular online tools out there when it comes to dealing with Gen AI and having a chat bot, but you might see this little section, this little button next to your prompt that says reasoning, right? We want to be a little less creative with what we're coming up with. And so 3.7 we saw as a benchmark, you can do mathematics really. So you got to think about that latent space of the model. What can it understand? But go forth with some good prompt.